The galaxy had seen many wars. It had seen planets burn, empires rise, and entire civilizations disappear into history. But on this day, something happened that nobody would ever forget. Across thousands of star systems, billions of beings stopped what they were doing and turned their eyes toward the capital world of the Galactic Empire. Huge screens filled city centers. News channels broadcasted live from every corner of known space. Even ships traveling between stars paused their normal activities to watch. Everyone wanted to see the same thing: the public execution of General Elena Ward. The Empire called it justice. Many others called it murder. The execution platform stood in the center of a massive stone plaza. Thousands of Imperial soldiers surrounded the area. Above them, giant warships floated silently in the sky. The atmosphere felt heavy. Even those who hated humans felt uncomfortable, because Elena Ward was not an ordinary prisoner. She was a legend. For over 20 years, she had protected trade routes, stopped pirate fleets, and defended colonies from dangerous attacks. Her name was known on hundreds of worlds. Many alien species respected her. Some even considered her a hero. Yet today she stood alone in chains. The chains wrapped around her wrists and ankles, but they could not make her look weak. She stood straight. Her head remained high. Her face showed no fear. The crowd watched carefully. Many expected her to cry. Many expected her to beg for mercy. She did neither. Inside the Imperial Palace overlooking the plaza, Emperor Veron watched from a golden balcony. A small smile appeared on his face. Everything had gone exactly as planned. Months earlier, Elena had refused one of his orders. A peaceful human colony near the edge of Imperial space had been marked for destruction. Officially, the Empire claimed the colony was hiding rebels. But Elena had discovered the truth. The colony was innocent. The Emperor wanted the planet's rare resources. Nothing more. When Elena refused to participate, she became a problem, a dangerous problem. She knew too much, so the Empire arrested her. False evidence was created. Witnesses were threatened. Charges of treason appeared overnight. And now the galaxy was about to watch her die. The Emperor stepped forward. His voice echoed across the plaza. General Elena Ward has betrayed the Galactic Empire. She has disobeyed lawful orders and endangered Imperial security. The crowd remained mostly silent. Something felt wrong. The Emperor continued speaking. For her crimes, she has been sentenced to public execution. A few cheers rose from loyal supporters. Most people simply watched. Elena listened quietly. She knew every accusation was a lie, but she also knew arguing would change nothing. The trial had never been real. The verdict had already been decided long before she entered the courtroom. A soldier approached her. "Any final words?" he asked. The question spread through the crowd. Billions waited for her answer. For several seconds, Elena said nothing. She slowly looked around the plaza. She saw humans standing among the crowd. Some were crying. Others looked angry. Many looked afraid. Then she looked upward toward the stars. For a moment, she remembered her long career. She remembered distant worlds, old friends, battles won, lives saved. She remembered every sacrifice. And strangely, she smiled. The smile confused everyone. Why would a woman smile moments before death? Even the Emperor frowned. Then Elena finally spoke. Her voice was calm, clear, strong. "Remember the treaty beneath the first stars." The entire plaza fell silent. People exchanged confused looks. What treaty? What first stars? No one understood. The Emperor laughed. Meaningless words from a defeated woman. The execution officer raised his weapon. The crowd held its breath. The officer hesitated for a second. Even he seemed uncomfortable. But orders were orders. The weapon fired. A bright flash crossed the platform. General Elena Ward collapsed. The plaza became silent, completely silent. One of humanity's greatest heroes was dead, far away on human worlds. Families watched in horror. Some cried openly. Others stared at their screens in disbelief. Many felt something break inside them. The Empire had crossed a line. But nobody knew how serious that mistake truly was. Not yet, because at the exact moment Elena died, something else happened. Something hidden, something ancient. Deep beneath the surface of forgotten planets, machines suddenly activated. Systems that had been asleep for thousands of years powered on. Ancient lights glowed in underground chambers. Dust-covered computers began working again. Long, silent antennas turned toward the stars. Across the galaxy, secret beacons awakened, one by one, then another, then hundreds more. Automatic signals raced through space at impossible speed. Nobody living knew these systems existed. Nobody remembered who built them, not even the Empire. Inside an abandoned station drifting beyond known space, warning lights suddenly flashed red. Ancient symbols appeared across dark screens. A computer voice spoke for the first time in over 3,000 years. Treaty violation confirmed. A second message followed. Protected representative terminated. Then came the final announcement. Emergency protocols initiated. Far beyond the borders of the Empire, beyond every explored map, a hidden signal reached its destination. Something received it. Something powerful. Something that had been waiting for this exact moment. Back on the capital world, Emperor Varon celebrated. His advisors congratulated him. Imperial news channels praised his strength. To them, the problem was solved. Elena Ward was gone. The truth had been buried. The Empire remained in control. At least that was what they believed. They did not see the ancient systems awakening. They did not hear the warning signals crossing the stars. And they certainly did not understand Elena's final words. But somewhere in the darkness between galaxies, enormous ships began moving. Ships older than the Empire itself. Ships connected to a promise made in a forgotten age. A promise written long before the Empire was born. A promise that could not be broken without consequences. General Elena Ward was dead. The galaxy mourned. The Emperor celebrated. And the ancient treaty had just declared that a debt must be paid. The coming storm would shake every star system in existence. But for now, nobody knew it was coming. Nobody except the ancient machines that had finally awakened. For 3 days after General Elena Ward's execution, the galaxy remained quiet. Too quiet. The Emperor saw this as a victory. No protests. No rebellions. No human fleets moving toward Imperial space. Everything appeared normal. Inside the Imperial Palace, Emperor Varon sat comfortably on his throne, enjoying reports from his advisors. The human systems remained peaceful. One advisor said, "Trade routes are functioning normally," another reported. "A few human leaders have issued complaints, but nothing serious." The Emperor smiled. He had expected anger, maybe even war. Instead, humanity seemed broken, defeated, weak, exactly as he wanted. "Good," Varon said. "Soon everyone will forget Elena Ward ever existed." The advisors nodded. But far away, on a small mining world near the edge of Imperial space, something strange happened. An old communication tower suddenly activated. The tower was ancient, older than the colony itself. Most people believed it was abandoned. For nearly 2,000 years, it had done absolutely nothing. Then, without warning, its lights turned on. Workers nearby stopped and stared. A deep humming sound echoed through the ground. Dust fell from metal walls. Ancient machinery began moving. Nobody understood why. Within minutes, similar events started happening elsewhere. Old stations activated. Forgotten satellites woke from sleep. Ancient communication relays suddenly transmitted encrypted signals. Across the galaxy, hundreds of long-dead systems came back to life. Governments noticed. Military intelligence noticed. Scientists noticed. Nobody understood the connection. Yet every activation happened after Elena Ward's death. That fact made many leaders nervous. Very nervous. On the peaceful world of Carrot Prime, the alien President Taller received an emergency report. The elderly leader listened silently. His face slowly lost all color. "Are you absolutely certain?" he asked. The officer nodded. "The signals match historical records exactly." President Taller stood from his chair. His hands were shaking. "Impossible." The officer looked uncomfortable. "We thought the records were myths." "So did I," Taller whispered. For several moments, neither spoke. Finally, the president gave a single order: "Seal the archives." Nobody enters without my permission. The officer left immediately. Tyler walked toward a window overlooking his city. For years, he had believed certain stories were legends, children's tales. Ancient myths created to frighten arrogant rulers. Now, he was no longer sure, because the signals matched records from a forgotten agreement, an agreement older than every modern government, an agreement known only to a handful of leaders, the Ancient Treaty. Meanwhile, similar conversations were taking place across dozens of worlds. Presidents, kings, council members, military commanders, all received the same warning. All reacted with fear, and all asked the same question. Could the treaty really still be active? Most hoped the answer was no. The Galactic Empire, however, ignored every warning. When reports reached Emperor Veron, he laughed. Ancient treaty, he said. Some old fairy tale? His advisors laughed with him. The Empire believed itself untouchable. It controlled thousands of systems. Its fleets dominated known space. What threat could possibly come from a forgotten document? The Emperor ordered the reports dismissed. But one advisor remained uneasy. Minister Corvin had spent years studying ancient history. He knew things most people didn't. After the meeting ended, he returned to his private office. There, he opened restricted archives. Records hidden from the public. Records hidden even from many government officials. Slowly, he read through ancient files. His fear grew with every page. Thousands of years earlier, long before the Empire existed, the galaxy had nearly died. A mysterious disaster had spread across hundreds of worlds. Entire civilizations faced extinction. Governments collapsed. Billions perished. At that time, humanity had been different. Smaller, less powerful, but they had done something extraordinary. Human explorers discovered the source of the disaster. Human scientists found solutions. Human fleets delivered aid across countless star systems. They saved species that could never repay them. When the crisis finally ended, many civilizations demanded a way to honor humanity forever. That was when the Ancient Treaty was created. Its purpose was simple. Human protectors would always be guaranteed safety under galactic law. Any civilization that publicly executed or betrayed such a protector would face consequences. Severe consequences. The agreement was signed by hundreds of species. Over time, governments changed. Empires rose and fell. The treaty faded into history. Most people forgot it existed. But one sentence terrified Minister Corvin. A sentence written in ancient language. A sentence repeated throughout every record. The treaty shall enforce itself. Corvin stared at those words. Enforce itself? How? The records did not explain. But suddenly he remembered the reports, the activated stations, the ancient signals, the strange system failures. His stomach tightened. Maybe the treaty had never truly disappeared. Maybe it had simply been waiting. Elsewhere, another strange event unfolded. A massive Imperial shipyard near the planet Draken suddenly lost power. Workers scrambled to restore systems. Nothing worked. Computers refused commands. Security networks shut down. Construction of new warships stopped completely. Technicians searched for answers. They found none. Hours later, similar failures spread to other facilities. Military databases malfunctioned. Navigation systems experienced errors. Long-range communication arrays stopped responding. The problems were small at first, easy to ignore, but they continued growing, one system after another, one failure after another. Nobody could explain it. By the end of the week, concern had spread through Imperial leadership. Even Emperor Veron noticed. Still, he refused to believe the warnings. It is coincidence, he declared. Nothing more. Yet deep inside, doubt had begun growing, and far beyond Imperial space, something enormous moved through the darkness. Hidden fleets traveled silently between stars. Their engines produced no visible energy. Their technology seemed impossible. Ancient symbols glowed across their hulls. Symbols older than recorded history. Symbols connected to the treaty. Thousands of vessels moved together, waiting, watching, preparing. Back on Earth, humanity continued mourning Elena Ward. Memorials filled cities. Candles burned through the night. Children left flowers beneath statues. Many wondered why Elena's final words had sounded so important. Only a few historians recognized them. Only a few understood their meaning. And those historians were becoming increasingly frightened because they knew exactly what was happening. The ancient treaty was not a myth. It was real, and after thousands of years of silence, it had finally awakened. The Empire still believed it had won, but unseen forces were already moving into position. The punishment had not begun yet. These were only the first warnings. The real consequences were still coming, and when they arrived, the entire galaxy would feel them. The first week after General Elena Ward's execution passed slowly. The galaxy waited. Nothing happened. No fleets appeared. No worlds rebelled. No armies marched. Because of this, Emperor Veron became even more confident. Every morning, he received reports from his advisors. Every morning, they told him the same thing. Humanity was angry but peaceful. The Empire remained strong. The government remained in control. To Veron, this proved one thing. The ancient treaty was nothing but an old story, a forgotten legend. And legends could not threaten an empire. At least, that was what he believed. Then the first radar warning arrived. It happened aboard the Imperial battleship Iron Crown. The massive warship was one of the most powerful vessels in the Empire. It carried enough weapons to destroy entire planets. Its captain, Admiral Turin, was inspecting the ship when every screen suddenly turned black. The bridge fell silent. Officers exchanged worried looks. A second later, red warning symbols appeared across every display. Then a message appeared. Just 6 words. Treaty violation confirmed. Await judgment. Nobody had typed the message. Nobody knew where it came from. The captain immediately ordered a system scan. Nothing was found. The message vanished moments later. But before anyone could relax, the ship's weapons shut down, then its shields, then its engines. The mighty battleship drifted helplessly through space. Engineers worked for 16 hours trying to solve the problem. Nothing worked. The system simply refused commands. The impossible had happened. One of the Empire's greatest warships had become useless. News of the incident quickly reached the Imperial Palace. Emperor Veron dismissed it. Technical malfunction, he said, but his advisors looked nervous. Because similar reports were beginning to arrive from across the Empire, military stations lost power. Defense platforms stopped responding. Navigation systems failed. Ancient star maps suddenly disappeared from government databases. Entire fleets became stranded. The failures seemed random, but they were not. Unknown to the Empire, every affected system shared one thing. They were built using ancient technology connected to the treaty. Technology nobody fully understood anymore. Technology that was no longer obeying imperial authority. As these strange events spread, panic slowly began growing among military commanders. One commander reported losing contact with 40 warships. Another reported that automated defenses had locked imperial personnel out of their own facilities. Others described seeing strange symbols appear on their screens. Always the same symbols. Always the same warning. Await judgment. Meanwhile, something even stranger happened. Far beyond the Empire's borders, civilian traders began reporting sightings. Huge ships, ancient ships, ships unlike anything seen before. At first, the reports were ignored. Pilots often imagined things, especially during long journeys through deep space. But then more reports arrived. Then dozens more. The descriptions were nearly identical. Gigantic vessels, dark metallic hulls, glowing silver symbols, no visible weapons, no visible engines, and complete silence. The ships never attacked. They never communicated. They simply watched. One merchant captain described the experience later. It felt like being watched by history itself. The phrase spread quickly. Soon everyone was talking about the mysterious vessels. Who built them? Where had they come from? Why were they appearing now? Nobody knew, but fear continued growing. Back on Earth, historians worked day and night. For the first time in centuries, ancient archives were opened. Old records were examined. Lost languages were translated. And slowly, the truth began emerging. Professor Amelia Ross was one of the leading experts. She spent 3 sleepless nights studying forgotten treaty documents. When she finally understood what she was reading, she nearly dropped the data tablet in her hands. "It can't be," she whispered. But it was. The records clearly described a hidden organization. An organization created to protect the treaty. An organization called the Guardians. According to the documents, the Guardians were not soldiers. They were not politicians. They answered to no government. Their only purpose was enforcing the treaty. If the treaty was violated, they would awaken. If humanity's protected representatives were harmed, they would respond. And they possessed technology thousands of years ahead of modern civilizations. Professor Ross immediately contacted human leadership. Her warning was simple. The Guardians are real. The message spread quickly through Earth's government. Shock followed. Many leaders had never heard of the Guardians. Others believed they were myths. Now evidence suggested otherwise. And if the records were correct, the Guardians were already moving. At the same time, Emperor Varon received troubling news. Several alien governments had suddenly withdrawn support from the Empire. Trade agreements were suspended. Military partnerships were frozen. Diplomatic meetings were canceled. When asked for explanations, most governments gave vague answers. But privately, many leaders feared becoming associated with a treaty violator. They remembered old stories. Stories their ancestors had passed down for generations. Stories warning future rulers never to betray humanity. Now those warnings suddenly seemed important. Very important. The emperor grew angry. He demanded loyalty. He demanded answers. Instead, more bad news arrived. Economic systems began failing. Trade routes became unstable. Several colonies declared independence. Military recruitment numbers dropped sharply. For the first time, cracks appeared in imperial power. And the cracks were spreading. Then came the message that changed everything. It appeared simultaneously across every major government communication network in the galaxy. Every screen, every station, every military headquarters, every government office. The message interrupted all broadcasts. No firewall stopped it. No security system blocked it. For exactly 30 seconds, the galaxy stared at the same words. The treaty has judged. Prepare for enforcement. Nothing else. No signature. No explanation. Just those 4 words. Then the message disappeared. The galaxy froze. Citizens stared at screens in silence. Leaders looked at each other with fear. Military commanders immediately ordered emergency meetings. Stock markets crashed within hours. Trade traffic slowed. Rumors exploded across countless worlds. Everyone understood one thing. Something was coming. Something powerful. Something ancient. And nobody knew how to stop it. Late that night, Emperor Varon stood alone inside his private chamber. For the first time since Elena Ward's execution, he felt genuine fear. The room was quiet. The stars outside his window seemed colder than usual. He remembered Elena's final smile. He remembered her final words. Remember the treaty beneath the first stars. At the time, he had laughed. Now, he wasn't laughing anymore. Because somewhere beyond the darkness of known space, thousands of ancient ships were approaching, and the Guardians had finally begun their return. The message spread across the galaxy like wildfire. The treaty has judged. Prepare for enforcement. For days, nobody talked about anything else. News channels repeated the message endlessly. Experts argued over its meaning. Politicians tried to calm frightened citizens. But fear continued growing. Because deep down, everyone knew something important. Nobody had sent that message. No government claimed responsibility. No military admitted involvement. The message had simply appeared. And that made it terrifying. On the imperial capital world, emergency meetings were held day and night. Emperor Varon sat at the head of a massive conference table surrounded by military commanders. The room felt tense. Everyone looked worried. A senior admiral activated a holographic display. Red markers appeared across the galaxy. There have been over 400 confirmed sightings, the admiral reported. Varon frowned. Sightings of what? The admiral hesitated. Then he answered, the ancient ships. The room became silent. The hologram zoomed outward. More red markers appeared. Then more. Then hundreds more. The ships were everywhere. Near trade routes. Near military bases. Near important colonies. Yet strangely, they never attacked. They simply watched, as if waiting for something. Varon slammed his fist against the table. Then destroy them. The admiral looked uncomfortable. We tried. What happened? The officer swallowed nervously. Our weapons couldn't lock onto them. Another commander spoke. The ships disappear whenever we approach. Disappear? Yes, Your Majesty. The commander pointed at the hologram. They simply vanish. Nobody liked hearing that. The Empire possessed some of the best technology in the galaxy. Nothing should have been able to do that. Yet these mysterious ships ignored every known rule. For the first time, Emperor Varon had no answer. Meanwhile, far away from the capital, something extraordinary happened. Near the edge of explored space, an Imperial patrol fleet detected a massive object emerging from hyperspace. The officers immediately assumed it was an enemy fleet. Battle stations were activated, weapons powered up, fighter squadrons launched. Then the object appeared, and every person on the bridge froze. The ship was enormous. Not large, not huge, enormous. It was larger than entire cities. Its silver hull stretched across space like a floating mountain. Ancient symbols glowed softly across its surface, symbols nobody could read. The patrol commander stared at the sensor data. The readings made no sense. The vessel possessed energy levels greater than entire planets. Technology centuries beyond anything the Empire had ever seen. Then a transmission arrived. The voice was calm, cold, ancient. We are the Guardians. The bridge became completely silent. The commander slowly sat down. His hands were shaking, because everyone knew that name now. The Guardians, the protectors mentioned in the ancient records, the enforcers of the treaty. They were real, and they had arrived. Across the galaxy, similar encounters began taking place. More Guardian ships emerged from deep space. Then more, then thousands more. Entire fleets appeared around important star systems. Yet they still did not attack. They simply announced their presence and waited. Citizens watched in awe. Many expected destruction. Many expected war. Instead, the Guardians behaved with incredible discipline. They threatened no civilians. They harmed no innocent people. Their attention focused entirely on Imperial military assets. And then the enforcement began. The first target was an Imperial weapons factory orbiting the planet Dravos. Millions watched live broadcasts. Without warning, a Guardian vessel appeared nearby. No weapons fired. No explosions occurred. Instead, a pulse of silver light spread across the station. Seconds later, every machine inside stopped working. Every weapon, every computer, every defense system, all disabled instantly. The factory became useless. Workers were allowed to leave safely. Nobody was harmed. But the station would never build weapons again. The same thing happened elsewhere. Shipyards shut down. Military bases lost power. Defense networks disconnected themselves. Entire fleets found their weapons permanently disabled. The Guardians were dismantling the Empire, piece by piece, without firing a single shot. Panic exploded across Imperial space. Governors resigned. Military officers surrendered positions. Several worlds openly abandoned Imperial rule. The Empire suddenly looked far less powerful than before. Even worse, hidden truths began emerging. Journalists uncovered classified documents. Whistleblowers came forward. Secret recordings leaked onto public networks. The galaxy learned what had really happened to Elena Ward. The evidence was overwhelming. The colony she protected had been innocent. The charges against her had been fabricated. Witnesses had been threatened. Judges had been bribed. The execution had been a lie from beginning to end. Public anger exploded, not just among humans, among everyone. Species that once supported the Empire felt betrayed. They had watched a hero die because of corruption, and now they wanted answers. On hundreds of worlds, protests filled the streets. People demanded justice. People demanded accountability. People demanded the Emperor's removal. Back on Earth, memorials for Elena Ward grew larger every day. Her final speech was replayed constantly. Children memorized her words. Adults discussed them endlessly. The woman the empire tried to erase was becoming more famous than ever. But something even more surprising was happening. Humanity was not calling for revenge. Many expected human leaders to demand war. After all, one of their greatest heroes had been murdered. Instead, human governments remained calm, disciplined, patient. They watched events unfold carefully. This surprised many alien species. One reporter summed it up perfectly. The Empire responds with fear. Humanity responds with control. The statement spread everywhere, and respect for humanity continued growing. Then came the biggest shock of all. A Guardian flagship appeared directly above the Imperial capital. Millions looked up and saw it hanging in the sky. Its massive shadow covered entire districts. Emergency alarms sounded across the planet. Military forces rushed into position, but nobody attacked. The Guardian vessel simply waited. Then a transmission appeared on every screen, every home, every office, every military command center. A silver symbol filled the display, the same symbol seen on every Guardian ship. Then the ancient voice spoke again. The investigation is complete. Citizens listened nervously. The Galactic Empire has been found guilty of violating the ancient treaty. Across the capital, silence spread. The voice continued. Further enforcement actions will begin immediately. Then the transmission ended. No threats, no speeches, no dramatic warnings. Just a simple statement. Judgment had been delivered, and now consequences were coming. Inside the Imperial Palace, Emperor Varon stared at the dark screen. For the first time in his life, he felt powerless. Outside, thousands of Guardian ships filled the stars. Across the galaxy, governments were abandoning him. His military was falling apart. His secrets had been exposed. And the worst part was this. The real punishment had not even started yet. The Guardians had only removed his power. Soon they would come for the people responsible. And everyone knew exactly who stood at the top of that list. Emperor Varon himself. The galaxy expected revenge. After everything that had happened, revenge seemed certain. The Empire had lied. The Empire had murdered a hero. The Empire had broken one of the oldest agreements in history. And now its power was collapsing. To most people, the next step seemed obvious. Destroy the Empire. End it forever. Across hundreds of worlds, citizens demanded exactly that. News channels held endless debates. Military experts predicted a final war. Political leaders prepared emergency plans. Everyone believed the same thing. The Guardians would finish what they had started. But humanity surprised the galaxy once again. On Earth, the leaders of every major human world gathered for an emergency council meeting. The meeting lasted 3 days. Arguments filled the room. Some leaders wanted punishment. Others wanted peace. Many simply wanted justice for Elena Ward. The decision would affect billions of lives. At the center of the discussion stood a single question. What will Elena have wanted? For years, she had been respected not only as a military commander, but also as a person. She had protected innocent people regardless of species. She had stopped wars when possible. She had always believed strength existed to defend others, not dominate them. Yet now she was gone, and humanity had to decide how to honor her memory. On the 3rd day of the meeting, an intelligence officer entered the chamber carrying an old data crystal. The room immediately became silent. The crystal had been recovered from Elena's private records. It contained a message she had recorded months before her death. Nobody knew what was inside. The recording was activated. A hologram appeared. General Elena Ward stood before them, alive, calm, confident. For a moment, many leaders forgot she was dead. Then the recording began. "If you're watching this," Elena said, "something has gone terribly wrong." The room remained silent. Her voice sounded exactly as they remembered. "I don't know what happened, but I know one thing." She paused. "If people are asking for revenge in my name, don't give it to them." Several leaders exchanged surprised looks. Elena continued, "Justice and revenge are not the same thing." The hologram looked directly at them. "A person seeking revenge only wants suffering. A person seeking justice wants truth. The room grew even quieter. Humanity must never become the thing it fights against. She smiled softly. If my death ever becomes an excuse for cruelty, then everything I stood for will be lost. The message ended. For several moments, nobody spoke. Some leaders lowered their heads. Others stared silently at the empty space where the hologram had been standing. The decision became clear. Humanity would not seek revenge. Humanity would seek justice. News of the decision spread across the galaxy, and the reaction was immediate. Many alien leaders were shocked. Others were impressed. A few could barely believe it. The Empire had shown Elena no mercy. Yet humanity refused to answer cruelty with cruelty. That choice earned enormous respect. Even species that had once distrusted humans began seeing them differently. Meanwhile, conditions inside the Empire continued worsening. Entire sectors declared independence. Military officers abandoned their posts. Government officials fled the capital. The once powerful empire looked weaker every day, and Emperor Varon knew it. Inside his palace, the ruler who once commanded thousands of worlds now spent most of his time alone. His advisors had disappeared. His allies had abandoned him. Even members of his own government secretly blamed him for the crisis. The empire was falling apart around him, yet Varon refused to surrender. Instead, he became desperate. Desperate people often make dangerous decisions. One evening, he called his remaining military commanders together. Only a handful arrived. The room that had once held dozens of powerful leaders now felt almost empty. Varon stood before them. His face looked older than before. His eyes carried exhaustion, but they also carried anger. "We still have ships," he said. "We still have soldiers." The commanders listened quietly. "We are not defeated." One officer hesitated. "Your Majesty, the Guardians have neutralized most of our strategic assets." Varon ignored him. "We can still fight." Another commander spoke carefully. "Against whom?" The Emperor's expression hardened. "Against everyone." The room became silent. Several officers looked horrified. One commander finally stood. "No." Varon stared at him. The officer did not back down. "This is over." The Emperor's face turned red with anger. "You dare!" The commander nodded. "I swore an oath to protect the Empire." He looked around the room. "You destroyed it." Several other officers slowly stood beside him. Then more. Within minutes, nearly half the room was standing. The message was clear. They no longer followed him. For the first time, Emperor Varon understood how alone he truly was. But surrender was not in his nature. If the galaxy wanted him removed, it would have to force him, and he intended to make that as difficult as possible. Far away, the Guardians continued monitoring events. Their fleet surrounded important imperial systems. Yet they did not invade. They did not occupy worlds. Instead, they waited, because according to the treaty, enforcement was only half their duty. The other half was ensuring justice. And justice required proof, evidence, truth. Over the following weeks, Guardian investigators uncovered everything. Hidden bank accounts, secret communications, bribed officials, fabricated evidence, illegal resource operations. The list seemed endless. Every crime connected back to the same person, Emperor Varon. The case became impossible to deny. Even former supporters abandoned him. Across the galaxy, public opinion shifted dramatically. This was no longer a conflict between humanity and the Empire. It had become a conflict between truth and corruption was losing. Then came the announcement that changed everything. The Guardians issued a public statement. Every world received it. Every government heard it. The message was short. The investigation is complete. The guilty have been identified. Formal judgment will begin. Cheers erupted across many worlds. Citizens believed the crisis was almost over. They were wrong, because Emperor Varon had one final plan. Hidden deep within Imperial territory was a secret fleet, a fleet nobody knew existed, a fleet built for emergencies. For years, he had prepared it in secret, and now, with nothing left to lose, he intended to use it. If he could not rule the galaxy, then nobody would. As alarms sounded inside hidden military bases, Thousands of warships began powering up. The engines of the secret fleet roared to life. The final battle was coming, and the fate of the galaxy would soon be decided. The galaxy stood on the edge of war. For months, the Galactic Empire had been collapsing. Its allies had abandoned it. Its fleets had been weakened. Its secrets had been exposed. Yet Emperor Varon refused to surrender. Now he had revealed his final weapon, the Shadow Fleet, hidden for decades inside remote star systems. The fleet had been built in complete secrecy. Even many high-ranking Imperial officers had never heard of it. Thousands of warships emerged from hidden bases, massive battleships, heavy carriers, planet-killer weapons, enough firepower to threaten the entire galaxy. When news of the fleet spread, fear returned. Citizens watched emergency broadcasts. Governments activated defense plans. Military commanders prepared for the worst. Everyone asked the same question. Had the Empire just started a final war? Inside the Imperial Palace, Emperor Varon stood before a giant holographic display, showing his secret fleet. For the first time in weeks, he smiled. The Shadow Fleet represented his last chance, his last source of power, his last opportunity to escape justice. If they want judgment, he said quietly, they will have to earn it. Around him stood the few loyal officers he had left. Most looked nervous. They knew the situation was hopeless, but fear kept them silent. Meanwhile, on Earth, human leaders gathered once again. This time the mood was different. Reports from intelligence agencies arrived every hour. The Shadow Fleet was moving toward populated systems. Entire sectors could soon become battlefields. Millions of lives were at risk. Human commanders prepared defensive plans. Yet nobody wanted war. Not after everything that had happened. Then something unexpected occurred. The Guardians made contact. For the first time since their arrival, they requested a direct meeting with humanity. The meeting took place aboard an enormous Guardian flagship orbiting a neutral world. Human representatives entered a chamber unlike anything they had ever seen. The room felt ancient. Its walls were covered in symbols older than recorded history. At the center stood a single Guardian representative. The figure appeared almost human, tall, calm, timeless. Its silver eyes studied the visitors carefully. Finally, it spoke. The treaty has been enforced. One human diplomat nodded. But the Emperor still threatens billions. The Guardian remained silent for a moment. Then it answered. The Emperor has mistaken enforcement for war. What does that mean? Another diplomat asked. The Guardian looked toward the stars beyond the chamber window. We were never created to destroy civilizations. The humans listened carefully. Our purpose is to protect justice. The words reminded them of Elena. Justice, not revenge. The same lesson she had left behind. Then the Guardian revealed something shocking. The Shadow Fleet had already been infiltrated, not by spies, not by soldiers, by truth. For months, Guardian investigators had secretly contacted officers serving inside the hidden fleet. Those officers had seen the evidence. They had learned about Elena's innocence. They had learned about the Emperor's crimes. Many no longer trusted him. Many no longer wished to fight. Human leaders exchanged surprised looks. The Guardian continued. The Emperor commands ships. It paused, but he no longer commands loyalty. Back inside Imperial territory, that prediction quickly became reality. As the Shadow Fleet advanced, commanders began questioning their orders. Some ships stopped moving. Others broke formation. Arguments erupted across communication channels. The situation grew worse when Guardian investigators released their final report to the entire galaxy. Every document, every recording, every secret, all public. The evidence was overwhelming. Citizens watched recordings of bribed judges, secret financial transfers, private conversations proving Elena Ward had been framed. The truth could no longer be hidden. Across the galaxy, outrage exploded. Even Imperial worlds turned against Varon. Protests filled cities. Government buildings were surrounded. Military officers openly refused orders. The Emperor's support vanished almost overnight. Then came the moment that changed everything. The Shadow Fleet reached the edge of the capital system. Thousands of warships waited for Varon's command. The Emperor stood aboard his flagship. His face was pale. His empire was dying, but he still believed fear could save him. "Prepare all weapons," he ordered. No response came. He frowned. "Execute the command." Still nothing. Officers looked away. The silence felt unbearable. Finally, one commander stepped forward. The man removed his rank insignia and placed it on the floor. Then another officer did the same, and another. Within minutes, dozens of officers had resigned their commissions. The emperor stared in disbelief. "What are you doing?" The first commander answered. "We are choosing justice." Varon felt the world slipping away. "You swore loyalty to me." The officer shook his head. "No." He looked directly into the emperor's eyes. "We swore loyalty to the empire." The words hit harder than any weapon, because everyone in the room knew the truth. The empire had not been destroyed by enemies. It had been destroyed by one man's greed. Security officers entered the bridge. For several seconds, nobody moved. Then they approached the emperor. Varon looked around desperately. Nobody came to help him. Nobody defended him. His reign was over. Without a single shot being fired, Emperor Varon was arrested. The news spread across the galaxy within minutes. Celebrations erupted everywhere. Citizens filled streets. Ships sounded their horns. Worlds that lived in fear finally felt hope, but the most important moment was still to come. Weeks later, a public trial began. Unlike Elena's trial, this one was real. Evidence was presented openly. Witnesses testified freely. Every accusation was supported by facts. The entire galaxy watched. And this time, the truth won. At the end of the proceedings, Varon was found guilty of corruption, murder, abuse of power, and violations of the ancient treaty. The sentence was severe, but there would be no public execution, no revenge, no cruelty, only justice. Exactly as Elena would have wanted. Years later, peace returned to the galaxy. The ancient treaty was renewed. New civilizations joined its protections. The Guardians returned to the shadows, and humanity became more respected than ever before. On hundreds of worlds, statues of General Elena Ward were built. Children learned her story. Schools taught her final lesson. Strength without honor was dangerous. Power without justice was corruption. And courage was not measured by victory. It was measured by doing what was right when the cost was high. The Empire had killed her publicly. It believed her death would silence the truth. Instead, her death awakened an ancient promise. A promise older than empires, older than governments, older than history itself. And in the end, Elena Ward achieved something even greater than victory in battle. She reminded the entire galaxy that justice could outlive fear. Her enemies took her life, but her courage changed the stars forever.